Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. All right, let's focus on making the chicken jump from his current location to the next strip position. And so the strategy will be this. Let's jump to the halfway point. So right here, that's the full jump right there. So let's say that halfway is right there. The halfway point will be something like this. We want the chicken to jump up when he reaches the halfway point, and then in order to come back down, he'll fall to wherever the strip is located. And so if he's jumping up to the next strip, he'll go up and forward to the halfway point, and now he will fall down to the next strip, and so forth and so on. That's the strategy that we're going to use in terms of simulating the chicken jumping up from one position to the next position. So let's switch over to the Visual Studio Code area. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable. Actually, yeah, that's fine. I can create it here. Let's see here. So let's create a public vector3. There it is. We're going to call it jump target location. So this is just simply a point in space, right? That's what a vector3 is. It's a point in 3D space. It has an X, Y, and Z axis location. And so the idea is wherever the target location is, obviously that's where we want to jump to. So now that we've got this, let's switch back over here to the jump function. Next, in the get the Z position for this new strip section, I'm going to press enter. And we're going to say jump target location is going to be assigned this stuff right here. So I don't want to refer to the chicken's position. I want to get this position of the next strip and assign it to jump target location. So over here, just do this. Like that. I shouldn't have said the position of the chicken. It's the position of the next strip. But instead of applying it to the chicken directly, we are going to actually set it to a variable called jump target location. The next thing to consider is the is jumping set to false. I don't want this because as the chicken is going to be jumping up, 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 and then falling down, 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 we are in that is jumping mode. So I don't want to do this right here because the jump routine is going to be called over and over and over again. So let's go ahead and get rid of this for the time being. All right, at this point, let's scroll up to the area where we have all of our declarations of variables and what have you. And I suppose what we can just do underneath here where it says public vector3 jump target location, you're going to create another public item. It's going to be of type float, and we're going to say moving speed. And let's set this to 100F for the time being. It's a float, so we put an F over there. And all that's happening is the moving speed is going to represent how fast we are going to move from the source to the destination. Now that's obviously going to have to change. I'm just setting an initial value. Go ahead and save it, and you don't have to do this. I'm just going to demonstrate it for the video. When I switch over to Unity and give it a couple of seconds here to load, eventually you'll see that the moving speed is going to be over here. So we can change it based on our experimenting with the game, the trial and process error, or a trial and process type of situation here. I want to evaluate it. The next thing to do is after our moving speed variable that we've created, let's go ahead and create a private float, and we're going to call this midway point in the z-axis direction. And so the idea is this. Let me switch back over here to Unity. When we move this forward, the halfway point between the strip and where the chicken is currently located, I want that value. And so we're going to call that the midway point Z. And what I'll do is I'll scroll over here to jump. And in jump, this is where I'm going to change it. Now we know we go to jump because, as you can see over here in the updates section, if jumping is false, and we click the button obviously, so we click the mouse button, and if jumping is false, which it is initially, then that means that we're going to go over here to the if statement. Jumping is equal to false, is jumping is now going to be switched to true, and so we're going to go to the jump function. All right, inside the jump function is where I'm going to make my change. Let's scroll down here a little bit. And all right, so it looks like I have my jump target location established. Perfect. So after this, let's go ahead and say the midway point, Z, is going to be, now, whatever the distance is from the strip in front of us to where the chicken is, right? I want to know what that distance is. So first of all, and then I'm going to cut it in half. So first of all, whatever I do, I'm going to cut this thing in half. Now, where are you located? The chicken. Well, that's going to be this transform dot position dot z. All right, so this is where the chicken is located. Now, where is it that we want to go to? Well, that's the jump target location that we've just calculated. So over here, I'll just say plus the jump target location, and specifically for the z-axis, right, which is for us moving forward. All right, so once I've got this, now I know where the midpoint is because I've established that here. Another variable that I want to work on, so I'll move back over here to the top, and I'll put it over here in the public section of my variables, and we'll say public float jump height increment. Whoops, sorry. We spell height correctly. GHT increment. And we will initialize that. So the idea here is that, whoops, sorry, let me put a semicolon at the very end. The idea with this variable is that I want to establish how high I want the chicken to jump. So I'm just giving it a value of 10 right now. That might not be appropriate. For example, if I select the chicken over here, and let's see, if I move this up to 10, as you can see over here on the y-axis, that might be too high. But I really don't care what the value is right now. I'm just establishing a value, and since it's public, as you can, well, when I save this, so let me go back over here to save, and then when I switch back to Unity after the update, now we're going to see what that value is. Here it is, the jump height increment. It's set to 10, but I can change it to whatever value I want based on my experimentation. Maybe it should be 5, maybe it should be 3, you know, whatever. So I'm just giving it some initial value. Let me go ahead and change that back to 0. Oops, sorry. I'll select this whole thing, type 0, press enter, so it's back over here on Earth. But at least I establish a variable to indicate how high I want this thing to go, and it is a public variable. Okay, now let's go ahead and scroll down to the update section. Here we are, and right after our initial if statement, this is what I want to do to ask the question, if is jumping. If that's true, then what do I want to do? Well, first of all, let's go ahead and we're going to jump up and move forward a little, right? Because remember, this is the update function, so it's being called over and over and over again. Namely, it's being called once per frame. So while we're in the jumping mode, let's go ahead and jump up and move forward a little bit. Next, once we've reached that halfway point, then we're going to say, oops, sorry, comment. Once we've reached the halfway point, we're going to be falling down. But still moving forward. All right. And then when we actually land, we may not actually land at the right location. So, because it could be a little bit off based on our movement forward. So we'll just make sure to make the chicken flat on the ground and at the jump target location. Where are we supposed to jump to? Yeah, that's what we want to make sure in this particular point that we're at. And this is all going to be within an if statement. So let's say here, for example, if we are not at the midway point, right? So while we are approaching the midway point. So the way that we can do that is we can just say if the chicken, so that's dot transform position dot z, right? Where is the chicken located? Is that chicken beneath or not, or behind, I should say, the midway point, right? Because we're moving forward, right? So here's the target location, here's the midway point, and here we are. We're moving forward. Okay, so are we before or not at the midway location? Okay, so if that's the case, then we're going to do this. Now, if we are at the midway location, so then that'll be an else if statement. Open and close curly braces. Okay. So let's say for here, this if statement, this is when the chicken is before the midway point. But what if we are at the midway point or beyond it? Okay, so then over here, the else if statement will take care of that. So if the chicken, transform.position.z, if the chicken is less than or equal to, less than or equal to the jump target location, specifically for the z-axis, right? So then, in other words, we are falling down and still moving forward. Okay, so we are beyond the midway point. So if we're beyond the midway point, this else if statement keeps on executing. So now we need to be falling down, but still moving forward. And we keep on doing that as long as we are less than or equal to the jump location, the jump target location. Finally, the last thing to consider is when we land, we want to make sure that the chicken is flat on the ground and at the target location. So that happens if all of the above is false. So we'll just simply put that in the form of an else statement. And so, namely, we just want to make sure that it's at that location. Okay, so let's go back over here to the first if statement and work on that. So we're moving the chicken forward. That's what we want to do. So we'll take the chicken's position, right? And we are going to give to it a point in 3D space. So we'll just go ahead and instantiate a new vector 3D, or vector 3, I should say. All right. In terms of the x-axis, nothing is happening to that, right? So I believe this is the x-axis, right? You can see the numbers changing over here, right? So we don't want anything to change in terms of the x-axis, so that'll stay the same. So back over here, here's my cursor blinking right here. We will just simply say this dot transform dot position dot x, right? So for the x-axis, keep that the same. Nothing is supposed to, nothing's supposed to change. Now, in terms of the y-axis, which is going up and down, as you can see the numbers changing over here. So in terms of the y-axis, we do want it to move up a little bit. Okay, so how will we make this thing move up a little bit? So we'll say this dot transform, and again we are referring to the chicken in this case, specifically the chicken's y-axis location. And what we're going to do is we want to add just a little bit of jumping up. And the way that we're going to do that is as follows. So I'll say plus, we're going to take that jump height increment, and we're going to multiply that times time dot delta time. And you'll recall over here for the time dot delta time, the completion time in seconds since the last frame. So in other words, what we're doing is we're just saying, yeah, we're going to use this as a multiplier. It's a little teeny tiny multiplier. So pretend like it's 0.1, 0.1 times 10. Then the next time around it's 0.2 times 10. Then the next time around it's 0.3 times 10. Then the next time around it's 0.4 times 10. So you can see this is getting bigger, so it's having a bigger and bigger effect as a multiplier with this jump height increment. That is going to be added to the y-axis direction. So in other words, it just moves up, 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 moves the chicken up ever so slightly every single time this update function is called. Okay, so then we got to work on the z-axis. So over here, I'll just say comma. Now for the z-axis, remember that's moving forward, right? So we want to move here, 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 here. We want to move ever so slightly forward until we get to our destination. All right, so over here, the way that we'll do that is we'll say the chicken's z-axis position. So transform.position dot z for the position of for the chicken. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to multiply that, or we're going to add rather, the multiplication of the moving speed. So the moving speed is just a number that we enter to say how fast do we want to get from point A to point B. But we want to move there in the same fashion that we were jumping up using the time dot delta time. We want to do the same thing, same concept, time dot delta time. Okay, so what this does is it says as you are moving forward ever so slightly, we are moving up, 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 up ever so slowly, and then down, 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 down ever so slowly. That's the idea behind that line of code. All right, so now that we've taken care of the code up to and just before the midway point, now we need to type in the code for what's going to happen when we are past the midway point. And so we'll do this as follows. In terms of the position of the chicken, right? So in terms of that position, I'm going to give you a new point in 3D space. All right, so that new point in 3D space has nothing to do with the x-axis, right? So I'll just simply put over here this dot transform dot position dot x, right? The x-axis is not going to change, but the y-axis is going to change. So the y-axis, as you'll recall, when I move this thing up, 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 right? So we're changing the y-axis. Well, if we're falling down, you'll see that the numbers over here, y, I want them to get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So whatever the ultimate distance is supposed to be in terms of moving up, I now need to decrease these values so that it eventually goes back down to 0. And so I'm going to type a 0 in here. So over here, for the y-axis, we'll say this dot transform dot position dot y, and now I am going to subtract the jump height increment times the delta time. In fact, I can just simply take this, copy it, and paste it. So the same thing that I was doing over here in terms of lifting up the chicken off the ground, now I'm doing the same thing, but I'm saying whatever your current position is, let's go ahead and decrease you ever so slightly. So if you're right here, okay, for the next update call, you're going to be here. And then for the next update call, you're going to be here. And then the next update call, you're going to be here, and so forth and so on. And we're just moving it down ever so slightly every time that function it gets called, and you know that it gets called once per frame. Okay, so let me, before I forget, change that back to 0, go back over here to the code, and that takes care of the y-axis. And then in terms of the z-axis, well, you're still moving forward, right? We've fallen down a little bit, but we're still moving forward. So really, I can just simply take this same code plus the moving speed times delta time, right? This is just simply saying wherever you are, yeah, we're going to have you move forward just a little bit more. So over here, this is the z-axis component of our vector 3. So we have the x-axis, we have the y-axis, and then down here at the bottom, we have the z-axis code. So the final thing to consider is when this thing has moved up, and then it's moving forward, and then it's moving down, and it's moving forward, it may be a little bit too far forward or a little bit too far back. It may be a little bit too far down or a little bit too far up. We want it to be at the right or at the correct position, which is namely wherever that strip is. We want it to be right in the midpoint of that strip. Well, I shouldn't say the midpoint because I use that word, I use that variable, so that might confuse you. What I'm saying is, you know, wherever the origin is of that strip in terms of the z origin, that's where I want it to be. Okay, so the way that we're going to do that to make sure that it lands right where it's supposed to be is we're saying in terms of the chicken's position, you are going to be given a new point in 3D space. Vector 3, double click, there we go. Open and close parens, semicolon, move back over here. So where are you supposed to be? Well, in terms of your x-axis position, nothing has changed. So I'm just going to give you your x-axis position because that's supposed to be the same. All right. In terms of the y-axis, which is, in other words, moving up or down, well, wherever that strip is, that's where I want you to be. Okay, so over here, we'll say strips, which is the list of strips, and sorry, square bracket. In terms of your index current strip, right, which is the one that we are currently looking at, which namely is the one just in front of us, right? So we're here, that strip right there, that first one right there. Yeah, wherever you are located in terms of the y-axis. So we'll say dot transform, dot position, dot y. Wherever your y-axis position is, that's where I want the chicken to be. In other words, I want the chicken to be resting on that. And then in terms of the z-axis location, well, that's the destination, right? So this thing is supposed to be from here to here. So where am I? Here I am. All right, so in that case, then that's just simply going to be the jump target location. We've already evaluated that, but specifically your z-axis jump target location. We want you to move forward to that specific location. The last thing to do in terms of the else statement is to type in that the is jumping state is now set to false because we've actually landed in our ultimate destination, so we are no longer jumping. We need to make sure that we set that to false, so that way when we go back over here, is jumping equal to false, then we can go ahead and change that to true. But if we are, we can't do this again in terms of a mouse click, right? Because we've set that to true. Okay, so while we are jumping, the update statement is going to be executed. We keep on doing this over and over and over again. So if jumping is true, or is false rather, no, it is not false, it's true. So we're going to continue to do this is jumping because it's set to true. But then when this is set to false, then is jumping is not going to execute because it's set to false, and it won't be set back to true until the user actually clicks the mouse button. So we don't want this function to keep on executing as long as you are not jumping. So we have to do this. Is jumping is set to false. Then this won't be executed because remember, this update statement keeps on getting called. You're not going to do this if you are false. So we have to set this to false when we get to the ultimate location or ultimate destination. Only when you click the mouse again. Then if this was false, yes it is because we've landed. So let's set it back to true because now there's a new location you're going to go to. I'm going to call the jump routine, and then the jump routine is going to be over here saying, okay, well, the jump routine, we're going to take a look at the next strip. We are going to get that next strip. We're going to determine what the next location is and also what the midway point is. Now I can come back over here and actually execute this code. It says, well, if you're in the jumping mode, then here's how you're going to jump. This is what it means to jump up. This means what it means to jump up and forward, to fall down and move forward, and then finally to land in your ultimate location. And then is jumping is false. So the next time that this update function is called, and if I have not pressed the mouse button, this is not going to execute. Okay, so I think we're done with the code. Go ahead and click File and Save Your Work. So click Save Your Work. And then when you switch back over here to Unity, it's going to update and you're ready to run the game. Currently we have the moving speed set to 100 and the jump height increment to 10. I can guarantee you we're going to change that. Those were just initial values just so that we can experiment. So we're running the game now. So I'm going to click the mouse. Looks like it jumped up and stopped. And then I'm going to click the mouse again. Then it went to its destination. Okay, that's working. That's working. So it looks like we have some initial hiccup we're going to have to debug. Let's take a look at that in a bit. But that is moving way too fast, and I don't like those values. So ultimately, this is what I settled on. For the moving speed, I settled on 15. And for the jump height increment, I settled on 5. Now please, make sure that you use whatever values you want. In fact, let me just go ahead and save my work here. And let's see what happens here. Okay, so the program's running, so I'm going to jump. We still have that little hiccup in terms of it stops right there. We'll figure that out in just a bit. Let me click again. Oh, I like that. That to me is much better how it's landing. Now, if you want to change those values and make it, jump a little higher, if you want to make it jump a little faster, so let's see here. If I change the jump increment to 15, say for example, let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see what it looks like in terms of its jump increment. I personally don't like that. I'm going to return back to 5. If you don't like the speed, let's change that to 25. Okay. Okay, so maybe you're a little bit more of an aggressive player, or the audience that you're working with, they're a little bit more aggressive in terms of needing to get from this lane to this lane to this lane, so forth and so on. So you see how you can change that, in terms of the public settings. Okay, so in terms of figuring out what's going on, the first thing that you need to do is to go into the debugging mode, where you're going to stop the program and evaluate what's going on. So clearly something's happening here when we are jumping. So what I want to do is I want to stop the code right here. So for me, it's at line 73, where I have this if is jumping. Wherever you happen to have it, that's fine. Just go ahead and place a red dot right there, and make sure that your work is saved. And what you have to do is you have to run the debugging mode from within Visual Studio. So what you do is you click over here, and then you're going to get something like this. Now, my Windows screen looks like this. I'm sorry, my Macintosh screen looks like this. Your Windows screen may look a little bit different. The idea is to run the Unity editor in the background. That's correct. So what I do is I just simply click Attach. And let me click Attach again. There we go. Okay, so right now, as you can see here, here's the pause button. I am in the debugging mode. Then I switch over here to Unity, and I get this message: enable debugging for this session. Sure. So I'm going to enable it. And now I run the program. So let me go ahead and run the game. All right, so now before I could do anything, it went over here. Why? Because remember, the update function is called once per frame. So I didn't even click the mouse button. It just automatically went over here. So is jumping, let me hover on top of that. You'll see that it's set to false. So that means that it should not execute this. Okay, so let's see here. And this is a little bit different than Windows. The debugging tools in Windows are in the upper bar. For the Macintosh, here they are. So if I hover on top of this, it says step over, step into, step out. For the Windows operating, I'm sorry, for the Visual Studio within the Windows operating system, you'll find those debugging tools up here as well. So in this case, I'll just go ahead and click step over. So we are finished with this. I can continue. And what happens? It comes right back here into is jumping. It's false. So if I continue, it comes right back into is jumping, so forth and so on, right? So I don't really want to stop the code right here. I only want to stop the code if we actually enter into the is jumping. So let me go ahead and remove this particular jump, or this particular break, I should say. And then let's see now what happens when I click this. Okay, so now we're continuing. Nothing is happening. You'll see that, back over here in terms of me going back to Unity. Okay, so here's Unity. I haven't done anything. I'm still in the run mode. Now I'm going to click the mouse. Ready? 3, 2, 1, click. All right, so now that I click the mouse, it's checking if is jumping is true. It is true because remember, when the mouse is clicked, and if is jumping is equal to false, which it was before, we're now going to change is jumping to true. We're going to call the jump routine, and then we're going to continue from here to this if statement. If statement is jumping is set to true, so then that means we're stopping right here, which is our another break that we have inside here of our if statement. And so now we're going to evaluate this. Okay, so let's see what happens. Well, first of all, it calculated the midway point as 3.655. For me, your values may be different. Now, in terms of the z-axis location, let's see, if I hover on top of that z-axis, it says here that the z-axis is 3.31. And we are trying to get that, as long as that's less than 3.655, then we're going to do this if statement. So, and that makes sense because initially, let me go back over here to Unity. Let me see, I can't switch back to Unity. Okay, well, I was just simply going to show that in terms of Unity, the chicken starts before the midway point. This is true, so when I click step over, it should go into the if statement, and sure enough, there it is. So we went into the if statement, and now we are about to execute this. Well, first of all, in terms of the x-axis location, no change is supposed to take place, right? So that's all right. In terms of the y-axis, okay, so for the y-axis, it looks like it's 0.41, which is the location of the chicken, and we are about to increment. We're going to be adding that rather. The 5, that was what we entered in Unity, and then delta time right now is 0.01. It's really 0.014, but let's just say it's 0.01. Okay, that's fine. And then in terms of the z-axis, this means we're gonna be moving this forward a little bit. So currently, it is 3.3, as you can see here, 3.3. And again, we're going to be taking that value for the moving speed, and we're going to be multiplying that delta time. And so again, it's 0.01. Okay, so we make that particular calculation, and we assign that to the chicken. Okay, so let's see here. Let me make sure that I keep this straightforward. So in terms of the two values over here, in terms of moving up, and also in terms of moving forward, you are at negative 0.4 and 3.3. So let me now step over. Okay, so now let's see what happens when I hover on top of that. Okay, so now it says that we are negative 0.3 and that we are 3.8. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump forward here. Okay, so we are finished. As you can see here, that curly bracket belongs to this particular if statement. So we are finished with the if statement. If I step over again, we are now going to be finished with this update. So now let me just go ahead and continue. All right, so what happens is jumping is still true. And so as long as that z position, which now it's 3.8, as long as that z position is less than 3.65, oh, it's no longer less than 3.65. So what that means is that we have moved beyond the midway point. And maybe that's what the problem is, why it stops. Okay, so since it's beyond that midway point, what's going to happen? Well, that if statement is false. We're going to have to jump to the else if statement. So sure enough, we jump to the else if statement because this is no longer less than this. Now our target jump location, that is supposed to be, let's see here, oh, here it is. It's 4.0. But where is the chicken right now? Well, the chicken's at 3.8. Ah, the chicken is less than this position, so that means that we are falling down, but we're still moving forward. So this is true, so that means when I click step forward, it should go into the else if statement. Oh, it didn't. Look at that. That's interesting. Something changed. Okay, so I'm going to stop the program and investigate this. So I'm going to stop it here and go back over here to the game, and let me just stop the program over here to figure out what's going on. So let me investigate this. I'll be right back. Okay, I feel really silly because after investigating this, I realize what the problem is. The problem's not with the code. The problem is back over here in Unity when I was moving the chicken around. So let me go back over here to scene view. And when I was moving the chicken around, I did not start the chicken at the 0, 0, 0 location. So it's starting from here. So when I do run the game, okay, here we go. When I do run the game, it's not starting from the 0, 0, 0 location, so it goes up to the halfway point, and it gets stuck, as you can see over here. And then when I click it, now everything seems to work fine. So on the z-axis, now it's landing at 8, it's landing at 12, as you can see over here. It's landing at 16. Everything works fine. In terms of the y-axis, you'll see over here the changes when I click. It jumps up and comes back down, and so forth and so on. So let me stop the game. The problem was me. Problem is that I didn't change this to 0 and I didn't change this to 0 so that we could start from this origin location. So now if I click play, and then everything works fine. But you know, the good thing though about that is, number one, you see that, boy, even Professor Solis makes mistakes and I have to investigate them. Because what am I? I'm pretty much a professional problem solver. And that's what you are becoming, a professional problem solver. You have to solve people's problems. And in terms of this game, what was the problem? Well, the problem was me. The code seemed to work fine. But the really cool thing about my mistake is that you learned about placing a break to investigate what was the problem. And you know what? Previously, when I saw that this thing had a negative y-axis value, I'm like, why is that? Oh, I'll tell you the reason why. Because I set it there when I was moving this thing up and down, when I was moving this thing forward and backward, and I just placed it right there where it kind of looks like it's at the origin, but it wasn't, right? And that was throwing everything off over here. So in essence, all I have to do is replace those with zeros. And then over here in the code, I had a break right here. I don't need it anymore, so I'm just going to remove it. But at least now you can see how it works out in terms of wanting to debug the code. Now, for you Windows users, I would love for someone to create a video lesson of debugging. I would love to see your experimentation with that. And if you do something like that, then I'll give you a little bit of extra credit because that would really be interesting to see from the Windows side. Do you have to run into the debugging mode, or can you just simply place a break at a particular location and then run the program and it just automatically goes to that break? See, because on the Macintosh side, I have to do this. I have to actually run the debugging mode, right? What does it say here? Run the project or projects in the active run configuration, builds the projects in the, oh, it disappeared. It builds the project in the active solution build configuration if necessary. Okay, so long story short, I got to run the debugging mode, then I can run the program. For you Windows users, see if that's the case. Create a YouTube video lesson, and then I can show future students what you would have to do in Windows, and that would really help everyone out. Okay, boy, I've been talking for a long time, so I think I'm going to cut it right here. This is really cool that now we have the ability, every time we click the mouse, to just simply jump forward. And let me see here, if I go over here to the scene view, so let me go over here to scene view, and let me just kind of move this around here and zoom in a little bit here, and let's move down a little bit and zoom in a little bit. Perfect. Yeah, you see here that the chicken, zoom in right there. See, I can still see the feet, still barely see the feet, and he's centered. He's centered in the lane. So if we don't like that, if we don't like where the chicken, like you want to see the feet, well then that means, let me go ahead and stop the program. What that means is that in terms of the chicken, the origin is not located at the bottom where the feet are. In fact, I think that is the issue. So let's see here, with the scene selected, let me go ahead and select the chicken. Where are you, chicken? There you are. Okay, so I think he's, yeah, that's the 000 location. Let me just zoom in really, really close. Okay, I see the feet, but maybe the feet are under the ground a little bit. Perhaps I'm being a little bit too picky here, but let's see here. Let me lift him up a little bit. Lift him up. Oh, yeah, his feet were a little bit below the ground. So right there is the origin. So I think when I created this model, it did not set the bottom of the feet. I must have been like 1 or 2 pixels off. So you know what? I'm not going to be that picky. I'm okay with that. But if you're picky and if you want to see the chicken's feet, so then what you would have to do is you would have to change the origin of the feet in your model, and then when you bring that in, that would be right there centered. So let's see here. In terms of the centering of the chicken, it looks like it's fine. But in terms of in terms of the height, or not the height, but the z-axis location, when I change that to 0, the feet are just a little bit underneath the ground. Okay, but again, I'll leave that up to you. For me, I'm okay with that because my perspective is out here. Actually, my perspective is like this. I'm never seeing the feet anyway, so I'm okay with that. Okay, this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.